The husband kicked the wife out of the house, and she calmly handed him a letter that said, "I won't take care of you anymore. In 6 months, you'll be dead." John had always been a man of firm decisions. He believed that in any relationship, clarity was key. He couldn't stand the idea of living a lie, and it was with this spirit that, after long months of dissatisfaction, he decided it was time to end his marriage. Sarah, his wife of 10 years, deserved someone who truly loved her, he thought. And he clearly was no longer that person. John's decision came after yet another night of awkward silence in the dining room. The relationship had grown cold, and conversations had turned into trivial monologues about bills to pay and social commitments. There were no more laughs, affectionate touches, or companionship. He could no longer stand the emotional distance that had settled between them. When he finally confronted Sarah, he was direct and firm. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. We need to separate." He expected tears, an explosion of anger, or at least some resistance. But Sarah just looked at him with an unreadable expression, her blue eyes cold and calm. "I understand," she said without any apparent emotion. John was surprised, but relieved. This seemed easier than he had imagined. He proceeded to explain how things would be divided and that she would have to leave the house. Sarah listened to everything without interrupting, her face a mask of tranquility. When John finished, she stood up slowly and went to the desk in the living room. She pulled out a sheet of paper and began writing with meticulous handwriting. John watched her with curiosity. After a few minutes, Sarah carefully folded the sheet, handed it to John, and with the same serenity said, "I won't take care of you anymore. In 6 months, you'll be dead." Without another word, she grabbed her keys and walked out the front door, leaving John perplexed. The first few days after Sarah's departure were a relief for John. He believed the hardest part was over and that he could now move on with his life, free from the bonds of a loveless marriage. Sarah's letter, however, continued to intrigue and disturb his mind. Those enigmatic words, "In 6 months you'll be dead," echoed in his head. He tried to ignore them, convincing himself it was just a desperate attempt to instill fear or regret. But the calmness and certainty in Sarah's voice unsettled him. In the first month, John threw himself into work. He was a successful businessman with a growing tech company. Work had always been a refuge, a way to distract himself from personal problems. He spent hours at the office, reviewing contracts, attending meetings, and launching new projects. The constant occupation was his way of not overthinking Sarah's prophecy. But no matter how hard he tried, Sarah's words kept returning to his mind, especially in the quietest hours. John began to feel a growing unease. He wondered if Sarah knew something he didn't. Was it possible she had noticed something about his health that he himself had overlooked? In the second month, strange things started happening. John began to feel constantly tired, something he had never experienced before. At first, he attributed it to overwork and lack of sleep. But when strange spots started appearing on his skin, he decided to see a doctor. The initial tests showed nothing abnormal, but the doctor suggested a more thorough checkup. John agreed, but he still wasn't really worried. After all, he had always been healthy and fit. While waiting for the results, thoughts about Sarah's letter began to invade his mind again. Each passing day, the tranquility of his ex-wife on the night of the separation seemed more disturbing. He couldn't shake the certainty with which she had spoken those words. The test results came back, and to his relief, they showed nothing serious. Just a slight vitamin imbalance, easily correctable with supplements. John breathed a sigh of relief, convinced that his worry had been unfounded. Entering the third month, John began to notice that his friends and coworkers were looking at him strangely. He initially ignored it, but a comment from his assistant made him suspicious. "You look different, John. Is everything okay?" He looked at himself in the mirror, trying to see what others saw. There was something subtly different about his face, a tiredness or pallor he couldn't explain. He decided it might be time to rest a bit and took a few days off. During these days, John began to investigate Sarah's life. He wanted to understand why she had said those words and what she might have done. He tried contacting mutual friends, but no one knew much about what she had been doing since the separation. That's when he started to notice the house seemed different. Small details that had previously gone unnoticed began to stand out. A slight, strange smell. Things out of place. John began to wonder if Sarah had done something to the house before leaving. Determined to find out if there was anything hidden in his own home, John began a meticulous search. He opened cupboards, checked behind furniture, inspected every corner that could hide something. After days of fruitless searching, he finally found something. Hidden in the attic, behind old boxes, was a small vial with a clear liquid and an indecipherable label. John didn't know what it was, but he felt a chill down his spine thinking it might be related to Sarah's message. He took the vial to a friend who worked as a chemist in a laboratory. While waiting for the results, John began to feel a growing paranoia. He wondered if he was being poisoned, if the very house that had once been his refuge was becoming his prison. The phone rang the morning after he handed the vial to his friend. It was him, and the news was not good. "John, that liquid contains a toxic substance, something that, in small continuous doses, can cause severe symptoms and even lead to death." John felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He immediately understood that Sarah had somehow been poisoning him during their marriage. But how had she managed to do it without him noticing? And why? He decided to confront Sarah. He used her old number, and to his surprise, she answered. "John, I knew you would find out. I warned you. I won't take care of you anymore." Sarah explained that over the years the marriage had become an unbearable burden. She felt trapped, unhappy, and with no way out. The poisoning was a desperate way to get rid of him without having to go through the pain of a divorce. John was stunned by Sarah's coldness. She showed no remorse, only a deep weariness of someone who had endured more than she could bear. John decided to take the case to the authorities. He gathered all the evidence and reported Sarah to the police. The process was long and painful. John had to relive every moment of his marriage, understand the nuances of Sarah's behavior, and deal with the betrayal of someone he had deeply loved. The media latched onto the case, turning his personal life into a public spectacle. During the trial, Sarah's defense argued that she was mentally unstable due to the emotional abuse she had suffered in the marriage. John, on the other hand, found himself questioning his own sanity. Had he really treated her that badly? He tried to recall all the arguments, all the bad moments, and couldn't find anything that justified such an extreme. Sarah was convicted, but she received a relatively lenient sentence for alleged temporary insanity. John felt a mix of relief and bitterness. The woman he loved and who had tried to kill him was now behind bars, but the sense of betrayal and doubt about his own role in the tragedy haunted him. In the following months, John tried to rebuild his life. He moved to a new house away from painful memories and began seeing a therapist to deal with the trauma. Slowly, he started to feel like he was regaining control of his life. However, the emotional scars were deep. John began to question every aspect of his life, especially his relationships with others. He became more reserved, more cautious. The fear of trusting someone again was overwhelming. He started keeping a journal, trying to organize his thoughts and feelings. Writing became a form of therapy, a way to exorcise the demons of the past. He reconnected with old friends who helped him see that he wasn't the monster Sarah had painted him as in court. They reminded him of his moments of kindness, of how he had always been a loyal friend and a fair boss. With time, John began to open up to the idea of a new relationship. He met a woman named Emily, who was everything Sarah was not: kind, understanding, and loving. She knew John's story and still chose to be with him. This gave John new hope. During a romantic dinner with Emily, John received an unexpected call. It was from Sarah's lawyer. He hesitated but decided to answer. The lawyer informed him that Sarah had left a letter for him, a kind of final confession that was to be delivered only a year after the trial. John met with the lawyer the next day and received the letter. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Sarah's words, written in the same meticulous handwriting as always, were different this time. She seemed more human, more vulnerable. "John, I know what I did was unforgivable, but the truth is I always loved you, even when everything seemed lost. I was sick, mentally and emotionally. The poisoning was my way of asking for help, a help I didn't know how to ask for. You are not the monster I thought you were. You deserve to be happy. I hope that one day you can forgive me. Not for what I did, but for the woman I was and for the love we once shared. Sarah. John felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Tears rolled down his face as he processed Sarah's words. The letter didn't erase what she had done, but it gave him a different perspective. She was sick, and he hadn't noticed. Both were victims of their own flaws. The letter also gave him a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. It was as if a part of his heart, previously frozen by betrayal, began to thaw. He finally allowed himself to forgive Sarah, and more importantly, to forgive himself. John continued his relationship with Emily, now more open and honest about his feelings and fears. Emily was a constant source of support, helping him rebuild his confidence and believe in love again. 6 months later, John and Emily married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. During the reception, John gave an emotional speech about the power of redemption and forgiveness. He thanked Emily for bringing light into his life and everyone present for believing in him. John looked to the future with hope, knowing that the scars of the past would always be there, but also aware that he had the strength and support needed to move forward. Sarah was no longer part of his life, but the lesson she left was clear. Sometimes, it's necessary to face the darkness to find the light. The unexpected ending of Sarah's letter brought a peak of emotion John never expected to feel again. He understood that love and pain are two sides of the same coin, and that despite everything, life always offers a second chance to those willing to seek redemption and peace.